It's time for a little chat, as Raymond Reddington would say, about the NES Classic. Now, of course, as we all know, Nintendo have made the weird and frankly bizarre decision to discontinue the console. This is fairly public knowledge, but I wanted to discuss it in a video, as I felt it's worth discussing, and also there's been a little bit more news surface as the eBay market has responded to the discontinuation. Now, I did write an article on this yesterday, which you can see linked in the description below, but as I said, I definitely feel this is worth giving the attention. Now, I'm sure many of you are aware of the whole situation with the NES Classic, but if not, let me give the TLDR. Now, obviously, ever since the Classic released, it's been a bit of a mess, really, hasn't it? As the console has been extremely hard to get hold of with very limited supplies. There's been multiple tales of big ticket stores like, say, GameStop or Walmart or whatever, having like 3 consoles per store, and then months will go by and then they'll get another 3, and the accusations that Nintendo have deliberately restricted the availability of the console to increase demand and increase hype surrounding it is definitely one that holds some water, I think. Obviously, we don't know that that's what they did. It is only an allegation at this point, but in all honesty, I won't be surprised if that's the case. But the point is, regardless of whether or not it was unexpected or not, the console has been extremely hard to find. And to be honest with you, as I discuss in my article, which again will be linked in the description below, I find it hard to believe that Nintendo didn't know the NES Classic would be popular. I mean, just looking at it, you could tell that this thing would be extremely popular. All the people who perhaps, played all these games when they were younger, or perhaps they want to show these games to their kids, and it's just a great way to plug it into TV and be like, yeah, these are the games that I played when I was younger, or whatever. All sorts of reasons why this would be popular, and even if it's a younger generation who might have missed the NES, perhaps a bit too young to have been around for that, or something along those lines, and want to go back and play these games in a state tantamount to how they were released, it's pretty obvious that this thing would have the demand. It's basically what I'm trying to get at. So, when Nintendo announced the discontinuation of the console in both North America and, of course, pretty much everywhere else, my response was, what? To be honest with you, I was just like, I'm sorry? Did I mishear you? Nintendo are discontinuing a console that has been extremely hard to get hold of in the first place and has basically been printing money for them? What? Like, they've been fattening the pockets of scalpers the whole time with this NES Classic, and they seem determined to do the same thing again. And we have seen that very same effect happen already, with only a day really having passed since the announcement that Nintendo will indeed be discontinuing the NES Classic. Now, before we get into that, I'm going to put a bit of a straw poll link in the description as well as my article as to why you think Nintendo have done this. I think it comes down to a couple of options. One, they somehow weren't making money from it, it wasn't worth the production, which I don't really believe, but it's technically possible. 2, they have some plans for the Virtual Console with the Switch, and they don't want the NES Classic interfering with that. 3, they're planning something new, like perhaps a new and improved NES Classic, or maybe even a SNES Classic, which is obviously that option. And 3 is, I guess, just other. Let me know your opinions in the comments. You'll see, as I said, the link below. I mean, personally, I'm a skeptic at heart. I'm definitely a cynic. I personally think that it's one of 2 things. It's probably that they've got Virtual Console plans for the Switch and they didn't want the NES Classic interfering with it, or they've got plans for a SNES Classic, because as far as I'm concerned, the only reason to discontinue a console that has basically been printing money for you, despite the fact that it's been very hard to find, is if you have other plans lined up that it will interfere with. It's also not going to interfere with the Switch itself, but if they've got Virtual Console plans, then, the value of that goes down if you can just buy an NES Classic for $60 or whatever. But let's move on to the market response, shall we? There's an interesting article from Kotaku which has shown the response from some eBay users to the NES Classic. Now, just the other day, the NES Classic was selling for like $290, $270, $280, $250, way above what it's worth. Obviously, that's basically the price of a Switch, but, not what it is now, basically, which is $25,000, $15,000, yada yada yada. Now, those are extremely extreme postings, and they're not necessarily real. I think they're just probably people trying to seize upon the hysteria and discussion, just basically putting it out there to see if anyone with enough cash to burn is actually there to pick it up. There's a lot more quote-unquote real listings out there, but it still shows a massive increase in the average price on eBay. Now, Kotaku took to JJ Hendricks over at Price Charting, who's actually tracks historical prices across eBay, and basically it showed that the NES Classic averaged about $144.73 in March, and in April the average is $352.20. But we actually get a better picture of what's going on if we look at their findings across a much tighter period. For example, the day before Nintendo announced that there was not going to be many more NES Classics made, they were selling for an average of $106. That's, you know, above what they're worth, but not awful considering the thing is worth $60. That's not too bad in terms of raising the price to make a bit of a profit. However, now the average is $335. So that's, well, basically the day before the announcement versus today, which is a 52% increase from, again, the previous day, and a massive increase from where they were a couple of days prior. You know, I did speculate in my article yesterday that all this announcement was actually going to achieve was, well, increase the supply of the NES Classics already listed on eBay. You know, maybe you've got people who weren't intending to sell theirs thinking, ooh, could do with some cash actually. And you're probably going to see a flux of them on eBay. Perhaps that will bring the value down, but obviously that would change over time because, you know, let's say that a load of people list their NES Classics on eBay. You know, the value kind of goes down because everyone's trying to sell them, trying to, you know, basically capitalize on this. But after a while, of course, there's only a certain amount of NES Classics left in the world. As crazy as that sounds, it would be true. If they stop manufacturing, there's only X amount left, and obviously that's when the price will start to increase again as it starts to become a collector's item, a very limited run edition that's basically impossible to get hold of aside from these sources, because at this point, again, this is purely speculative, all the stores, or the GameStops, your Walmarts, your games, your whatevers, will probably have sold out a long time ago of the actual $60 proper give Nintendo your money variant. So yeah, to be honest, I'm just baffled by this move from Nintendo. As I said, they've got something lined up. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. They've got something else lined up and they don't want the NES Classic interfering with it, because to discontinue this only a few months after it came out, when it's been so hard to get hold of, you know, most of the people who wanted one originally haven't managed to get hold of one because it's been so limited, and now they're discontinuing them. And apparently this was the plan all along, according to a statement they gave to IGN. It's just, the whole thing is just like, what? In a way, it's perfectly Nintendo, because Nintendo does do things sometimes where I'm just there looking at them like, are you sure? Are you sure about that? Because it seems balmy, and this is definitely falling under the balmy category, to be honest with you, because if they decided, you know what? There's a huge demand for this thing, we should scrap our original plans and continue manufacturing for X amount of months, we're going to ramp up production, you know, make a ton of money most likely, and then discontinue it. That would make more sense, even then, than the situation we have now. But even if they did that, it would still be bizarre, because, like, why would you cancel something that's making you truckloads of money? Just like, what? Just what, really, is all I have to say about this. It's not very articulate, but this whole situation is just so weird, and I feel like I'm in a parallel universe, to be honest with you, because the situation just doesn't make any sense. So, as I said, check out the description for the link to my article and the straw poll, and let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. I feel like this is going to be an interesting discussion. Thank you very much, as always, for your support, and I'll see you next time.